All right, this is Melissa Ryan with Alicia Patterson, who will be introducing herself shortly. Want to speak to the title, which is about the pelvic floor, a doorway to the divine feminine. So I invite you to stay tuned and stay with Alicia and I if you have a pelvic floor, which it turns out if you are human and you're up and moving, you've got a pelvic floor.
Everybody.
And this is really about how tuning into this area is really a center for healing of the whole body, the mind, and the spirit. So with that, I'm going to have Alicia introduce herself and share more about the work she does and why this is such an important area.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Alicia Patterson. I am a women's health mentor and pelvic floor, cervix, uterine healing specialist, and I have spent many years learning all about this beautiful place in our bodies. And I'm so happy to be here and talk with you about it.
And so when we say pelvic floor, what does that entail? From an anatomical, you held that up.
Yes.
What does it mean what parts are we talking about? And what makes it so important for the rest of the body and for healing?
Yeah, awesome. So this is our pelvis. We have our pelvic bones, and this is the back side, and this is the front side. The pubic bone is right here. I'm going to take this uterus network out to show you the muscles. So lining the inside of the pelvic bones and supporting all of our organs, no matter what gender or anatomy we have, every body has a pelvic floor. So in this anatomy, this is the vaginal canal and the uterus. The pelvic floor is supporting all of our reproductive and sexual and digestive organs. And it's like a vast muscle network. It's so brilliant. And in my experience, and so many people that I work with, this is a really emotional and kind of spiritual experience to connect to this area of our body holistically with love and respect and reverence. And it's kind of blows people out of the water sometimes how emotional and spiritual for some people it can be. So, I always go to the nervous system. Our nervous system, everybody's talking about the nervous system, right? Anybody who's in somatic healing or body-based healing world, anybody who's had nerve challenges knows how vitally important the nervous system is. And the pelvic floor and the genitals, and especially the cervix and the uterus, are highly innervated, like abundant nerves running through this whole space. And our nervous system is electricity. It's conducting messages through our bodies about joy and pleasure and ecstasy and love and pain and rage and grief and shame and guilt. And so this emotionally intelligent view of pelvic floor and uterine and cervix and real trauma-informed care is my way. And I've found healing this area of the body to be the most impactful modality I've ever experienced. And I have been doing a lot of work on myself for a very long time with a lot of no results and frustration and feeling like what and confusing. And so I'm a huge advocate for learning about this space in our bodies. And it's different for different people. It's different based on our life history. It's different based on the anatomy and the parts that we have. And so I just love to advocate for people really loving this area of themselves and asking our bodies what's happening and what do you need. So that's really my short story.
It's really powerful stuff. And when you say people connect on a deep emotional or spiritual level, what would be an example of that? What do you mean when you're saying they're getting into that space and connecting with that space? What would be, just an example of what that looks like?
Yeah. So, vaginal massage, internal vaginal massage is what pelvic floor therapy is and the way that I practice it. There's also like cervix work. So the cervix is part of the uterus. It's an organ. It is not just a muscle, it's organ and it's muscle. And so connecting with all these different parts of ourselves, getting close to the bladder, learning about our anatomy, like with our hands, hands on, or with a practitioner, or with a partner. And it's so surprising to people how emotional and healing it can feel when we allow for it to be a really full experience instead of something that's super medicalized and like there's no consent and there's no trauma awareness and there's no emotional availability, or like super woo and no awareness of what the actual anatomy is of like, oh, it's this tissue, it's this organ. And so I've just loved bridging those worlds, like anatomy and science and emotional and the trauma awareness piece, because we're all living in this world. Excuse me.
We're all here, living in the world.
We're all in this world that fragments this whole space, and really, it's all connected. That's like my secret is like, hey, it's all connected. All of our organs, our nerves, our tissues, our blood flow. And that looks like so many different things for people. For some people, it's working on an experience they had that was very painful for them and really allowing for healing and loving touch or emotional expression. For other people, it's connecting with ancestors and feeling like, whoa, okay, so when I get close to my reproductive organs, there's a lot of family and ancestral and kind of collective or like psychic level material that comes up for people. And I just like to talk about this because I did this work for myself, and that family and lineage and ancestral and kind of like psychedelic experiences started to happen for me, and I wasn't prepared for it, and I felt like it kind of smacked me in my face. And so I like to tell people, like, these are the themes that live in this space. Your ancestry, your DNA is like encoded very deeply into our reproductive organs. So
with that, like, what something that's coming up for me, and this is a question I often get asked because I have, since getting introduced really to Alicia and this work that you're doing, because I was like, what is pelvic floor therapy? I had heard about pelvic floor PT because one of my clients had gone to that. They had a prolapse post-pregnancy, and so they were receiving pelvic floor PT, and that was really helpful. So I had heard that, but I didn't know there was also a component that was more kind of more gentle and less medicalized, like you were saying. And so since getting introduced to Alicia's work and having a greater understanding of what's out there and how deep it goes, and like we mentioned, the divine feminine in the title of this talk, that there's more out there with connecting deeply with our bodies and realizing that our wombs mirror the rest of the world in terms of how fragmented they are, that the different parts of our bodies aren't communicating and aren't working holistically like they're designed to do, and how powerful it is when you start connecting with those pieces. And with that, when I bring up this work, because I'm feeling so passionate about it, people ask a lot of questions. One of the ones is, well, is it meant to be sexual? Like, is pelvic floor massage a sexual experience? Right. So I give it my own answer, but I'd love you, since you're the expert in the room, how you answer that and what we're talking about with this ancestral. Like, are you touching on trauma ancestrally, or what does that mean also?
Yes.
In that lens?
Yes, that is such a common question. And I have, this is me. So this is me as a practitioner. There are many, many lenses. Different people have different ways. So I'm really just talking about the way I work. And for me, and this is how I was worked with, which I really appreciated and totally set the foundation for how I want to hold this for myself and for other people, that we are sexual beings. I don't want to be in a space that is like completely shutting that out and not allowing an acknowledgement of like, yeah, this is the space in our body where we have our sexual experiences. To go in here, really in, you know, intravaginal, it's internal work. It's on the inside of the body. It's so powerful. It's way different than working on top of the skin. I don't want to have contact in that space in a way that is manipulative or goal-oriented or like, you need to be a certain way. And that's the consensual piece. It's like, we want to be treated gently and lovingly and respectfully, and that is what allows this area of the body to open, literally like flower petals. Like the labia look like flower petals if you really, really start to notice all these different metaphors. But back to the sexual question, I don't, and I talk with all my clients about this, like the way that I work is slow and therapeutic. It's healing, loving, therapeutic touch. It's not vigorous, like a lot of stimulation. I'm not trying to stoke orgasmic fire in my sessions. Nobody who comes towards me really wants that. You know, they know that better sexual experiences outside of our sessions can happen. Like they may feel a lot more sensitivity. They'll feel a lot more pleasure. They'll feel an opening in their body. But they're not necessarily looking for a hyper-sexualized experience in session. And that's my tone with this. Like, it's not hypersexual or, like, effusive or so, like, huge and big and bold. And it's also not completely void of acknowledgement of our sexuality, because that, for me, is where the fragmentation occurs, is when we get so extreme on like either edge of the extreme, is for me where I usually start to see shadow stuff show up. And I just want to be whole. You know, I want to be whole. I want to be treated as whole. I want to treat people that I work with as whole, holistic in our work together. And that includes sexuality, but not in like a narrow, lasered way. That's just not my style. And there are people out there where it is their style. And if you're looking for that, then you go see them. Right? It's like we all, you know, agreements and consent and how do you work with this, and clarity on all of this is what people seem to love.
And transparency. Huge.
And when things are not clear, it doesn't feel good. And it can also be damaging sometimes.
So you answer that by saying, hey, the point is not to stoke the fire, so to speak. It's not to be purposefully sexual. Right. And there is space to process that, to be open to that. And the intention is really to be a therapeutic healing experience.
Absolutely.
As is a lot of body work, and the intention of being like getting into your body and connecting. And then it could be a meditative space, and so much can come out. So you started talking about like some of the emotions that come out. What are just a couple like powerful emotions that often show up when people start to even come into your office without even doing the work, the massage piece?
Yes. So I'd say what is most common is usually, and I was just reading about this in my womb cosmology book, it's kind of a funny term, that rage and grief are often so present. And I've been through that. Like, there's no judgment about that. I think sometimes shame and guilt is like covering that. Usually once people are with me, their shame and guilt is low enough that they can tolerate being here. Because if it's so extreme, then it's just not going to be possible to really do this work. But what is so powerful in the body is that rage, grief continuum. And once we really learn how to tolerate that and love ourselves and be in that and be connected, then usually the body and our heart and our emotional self, all of us just starts to expand, and then we start to get in contact with love. Like pure love, not romantic love, not family love, like the love that really keeps us alive and going. It's so powerful. And sometimes it is challenging to get to that point, but it is it's that sensation of tingly, warm, vital, pleasurable, open. We want this to feel good. I always say that to my clients. I don't want this to be like a horrible 2 hours for you. Pleasure, we want to allow for pleasure, and we want it to be in a way that feels really safe
and empowering.
Us. Absolutely.
And when you're talking about opening the doorway or that space for love, that pure love, how does that connect with the divine feminine and the original, like kind of circling back?
Absolutely. So this is where I start to go, I gotta get out there.
Expand.
Yeah, I'm totally, that's really who I am. So that's the essence of this work for me, is that's our core. That's the particle of God or the goddess or the creator or the mystery or whatever it is that we want to label it as. That spark of divinity. That is the divine feminine. That is what brought all of us into existence. We all come from this place. I'm like, hello, like we all come from this place. Why are we as humans doing what we're doing to this place?
It's so disconnected.
Totally. The amazing thing is that this divine feminine, it is a real thing happening. There are people talking about this all the time. There are amazing resources. There are trainings. There are body workers. It's totally this like human, it's all happening. It's all over the world. And so I really try to focus on that versus all of the pain and destruction and abuse and trauma, because it's so extensive. And I'm just like, you know what? I've been there, and I'm going to focus and also give a lot of permission. I'm not like bypassing the pain that is there, but let's hold love for ourselves and know that healing is possible. It's so profound. In one session, people's bodies will shift. It's incredible. So that's what I have to say.
That's the love and the divine feminine. It all comes together in such a powerful way in this sacred space that Alicia is talking about. So you have an online course that is being launched here soon. So if people want to learn more, it's already available.
It's available, yes.
So we will include a link to that. So if you're interested in learning more, and what does this course kind of go? It touches on some of the stuff we talked about today, I gather.
Yes, it's very thorough. It's robust. It is 6 kind of mini courses, and then you put it all together, and it's like a long experience. And the topics are anatomy, all about the body, and not just this space, so very focused on this space, but also whole body, blood vessels, nervous system, brain, digestion, all those other pieces that are so connected. And then the conscious menstruation journey. Menstruating is culturally, before oppression started to come into place, it was a very powerful time that was incredibly, like, people used to gather around the fire in certain cultures to listen to the dreams of menstruating women. It's like a, profound thing. And then emotional healing, which goes all into the emotions and topics like birth, like our birth experience, our early experiences with contact, our history around our sexuality, all this like really emotional, deep content. And then trauma. So pelvic trauma. Because all trauma in my training that I've done and that I really believe lands in the root. Any physical danger or threat to our safety lands in the root. It's the association and the energy and like medicine healing world. And then lineage and ancestry, and that really expansive, like collective psychic type stuff. But really all about our ancestors and what were their experiences and what is living in our bodies and how do we want to work with that. And then finally finishing with sacred sexuality.
Cool.
Which is the most, the most powerful and also the most challenging, because we usually end up bringing in consideration of another. As soon as we bring in another person with their life experience and all their stories and their feelings, it just amplifies the intensity. So it's very intentionally mapped out, just one step at a time. And I think it's beautiful, if I do say so myself.
Sounds awesome. Very comprehensive, so it's a really good foundation for somebody that's interested in working to integrate their pelvic floor and work towards holistic healing.
Yes.
For the last kind of thing to say, what is one thing that somebody, if they're like, I don't know what this would look like, I don't even know if I could take the online course, but I want to like get in touch, what is one thing they could do to make contact with their pelvic floor?
Oh gosh, so there's two ways that I always bring up as like very just easy introduction. The first is to practice Kegel, engaging the pelvic floor. You could even do it right now, as if you're trying to stop from peeing. It kind of pulls the pelvic floor up and in. And then if you bear down just a little bit, like you were going to push out, or not even push, but release a bowel movement or blood, just softening the pelvic floor toward the floor. That's, non-invasive. It's just a way to feel that part of ourselves. Notice what you feel. Do you feel weak? Do you feel heat? Do you feel pleasure? What do we feel? If you're like, well, I know about that and I'm ready for something else, then you can
I'm an
expert, right? You can use a tool, a sex toy, whatever it is, or a finger, and you put one finger in the vagina and you just feel over to one side, like really press over to one side, and you will contact one of your pelvic floor muscles, and then notice, what do I feel? Do I feel numb? Do I feel tense? Do I feel pulsing there? Do I know what I'm feeling? Can I breathe into it? Very basic, very easy, so important. And usually from there, people get a feeling for, I want to explore this, or whoa, that was a lot, and so maybe I want to go to counseling, or something else that's like a little more just slow. I just want to encourage people to learn and open their eyes to it, and then just start asking questions. And in my experience, once we start doing that, something will come into our space, or across our news feed, or into our email, or we'll talk with a friend and they're like, oh, check this out. And then it just starts to be, that's what happened with me. I was like, brrr, the snowball just starts rolling. So. Cool.
Well, thank you for sharing all your beautiful wisdom and insight.
Thank you.
And please pass this along to folks that you think might benefit from this, or this could speak to them, and we will include those resources to Alicia's class, and we wish you the very best today. Take care.
Bye.